On a lonely night, T organizes her belongings in her new home while reminiscing about her past with her beloved wife and children. The father of two seems to be enjoying his new life in the elite residential house of Ladda. T bought the house with the light installment credit system, so as not to continue to stay at his wife's parents' house. As the head of the family, T was no longer able to be humiliated by his wife's family. That night, T arrived at the new house to prepare the house so that his wife and children would be happy to be there the next day. In addition to arranging household items, T also decorates the rooms of her son, Nan, and the youngest Nat, with the children's favorite decorations. After cleaning the toilet, installing the bed sheets, and unwrapping the plastic table chairs, T practiced to welcome his wife and children to the dining table. In the morning, T rushed to pick up his wife and children at the airport. Little Nat looked so happy to be out of town. During this time they lived at his grandmother's house in Bangkok. Unlike his sister, the eldest Nan doesn't seem to like leaving his grandmother in Bangkok. Nan's closeness to his grandmother makes it difficult for Nan to move to a new house. Arriving at the elite residential area of Ladda, a beautiful view of the pool greeted their arrival. The mansion at number 132 made Nat and Nan amazed to see it. However, Nan still shows his disapproval of buying a new house and says that the house is only a loan. Parn persuaded his daughter to quickly adapt to a new place. What's more, T's father had prepared all the necessities for his family as well as possible. Nan still insists on going back to Bangkok because he can't be away from his grandmother and friends. While taking out his luggage, Nan grumbled to his mother, who brought the children to Chiang Mai. Meanwhile, little Nat seemed to be enjoying his new room. Although the room was no bigger than his brother's room, Nat was very happy to see the decoration of the room filled with toys from his favorite character Ben 10. The room is equipped with a cooling air conditioner that has a green motion sensor. The detector is used as an air conditioning control system or personal security alarm. Nat was afraid because the green eyes in the air conditioner in his room were always following his movements. T's father explained slowly while saying that the little green thing was the magic eye. In the evening, they eat together at the dining table. Nan and Nat had been arguing on their own while bickering over the magic eye. T expressed her happiness because they can finally gather. Nan did not hear his father's words and picked up the call from his grandmother. Parn advises Nan to finish his dinner first because it is rude to call while eating. Nan instead went to his room, leaving the dinner dish still warm on his plate. The first night in the new house, T surprises his wife with candles, roses and drinks in the room. I was so nervous, T spilled the contents of her drink bottle, which was caught by the candle flame. The small fire suddenly made them both panic and tried to extinguish it with a blanket. The romantic nuance turned into an economic conversation. Parn worries about her husband's monthly income, which has been cut off from his half-salary. T assured his wife that he would get additional income from the product sales incentives. T, who works as a salesperson for dietary supplements, is quite confident about the sales opportunities in the future. The next day, while at the office, T was asked by her boss to appear in front of a new employee as an example of the success of selling dietary supplements. T's boss named Yoi said that T was able to buy a luxury house and an elite housing estate thanks to her hard work for 3 months, selling the Empire brand diet supplement. T, who was trying to explain that the house she bought was still on credit, was stopped by her boss and replaced with boisterous applause. At the same time, Parn was at home tidying up her child's messy things. Grandma called that morning to ask how her child's family was doing in the new house. Grandma questioned the family car that T had brought to Chiang Mai. Parn's biological mother confirmed that the car was originally meant to take Nan and Nat to school, not to bring T to work. Parn asks his mother to understand if T is the head of the family in her house. It turns out that Parn's mother really doesn't like T, who impregnates Parn out of wedlock. Grandma always looked down on T and thought of her as an unreliable daughter-in-law. Parn hurriedly hung up the phone to continue his morning activities. A black cat that used to roam the estate sneaked into Parn's house and ran into the neighbor's house. At that time, Parn saw Mr. Samkiat's parents, who were helpless in a wheelchair. The black cat sat on the woman's lap where her hands were shaking, wearing a talisman. In the afternoon, T came home with a new 32-inch television. T said that the television was purchased on credit after receiving a special interest-free offer at the mall. He convinced Parn not to worry about the family's economic condition because they would be able to get through it all together. When trying to take the television in the trunk of the car, T's shoes accidentally stepped on cat litter in the yard. Because of her emotions, T threw her shoes and hit Pak Samkiat's car. The man rushed out of his house to ask what had happened. After being explained, Mr. Samkiat called his wife named Nid, the owner of the black cat. Roughly, Mr. Samkiat ordered his wife to clean the cat litter and clean T's shoes that were exposed to dirt. Parn was just stunned to see the red scar on the skin of Nid's neck. At night, from the window of Parn's room, we can see the activity of his neighbor, Nid, who is busy sewing clothes. In the morning, T was running as usual to enjoy the fresh air while offering her dietary supplements. He stopped at house number 8 where a woman was seen working in the yard watering the plants. T offers back dietary supplement products, especially if the woman is interested in becoming a reseller. T repeatedly called the woman but was completely ignored. In the afternoon, Parn picks up Nat from school by using public transportation. While walking towards his house, they stopped at neighbor's house number 8. Many residents gathered in front of the house with several police investigating. So that Nat wouldn't be afraid, Parn said that those people were shooting a movie. According to police information, the woman's body was found in the refrigerator when they entered the house. The woman's face was crushed like it was splashed with hard water. Even the woman's body had a foul smell even though it was placed in the refrigerator. The incident immediately became the hottest news because the Ladda housing complex, located in Changpuak district, was known as a comfortable and safe elite housing estate. The incident at house number 8 was broadcast everywhere, with the remains of a 20-year-old woman known to be from Burma. From the available information, the woman was tortured with a blunt object and her face was crushed by the concentrated acid. The woman's body looked very stiff with her legs bent and turned blue in the refrigerator. From the news circulating, the motive for the murder was due to the woman's affair with an unknown man. Parn told her husband that the woman who died was the one who T offered dietary supplements to. The murder incident made Pen and T worried considering the location was not far from their house. The next morning, T ran as usual at 6:15 a.m. She was surprised to see a quiet residential neighborhood with no one else out of the house. As far as feet go, there is no one to be seen. T stopped in front of house number 8 where the police line had been installed. The barking of the dog on the other side of the house startled him. T saw that the water faucet in the yard was still on. He reached into the railing with his hands to turn off the faucet. In the evening, the ghost of the Burmese woman was seen perched on top of the residential gate. T is still working late into the night to strategize the marketing of dietary supplement drugs in Chiang Mai City. Not long after, a woman's scream was heard. Parn and Nan come down from their room to check what happened. T asked his wife and child to stay in the house while he went out to check. It turned out that a woman screamed hysterically saying that a Burmese female ghost named Makan was terrorizing her. In the morning, when T took Nan to school, they saw many residents of the housing-moving house. Parn, who gathered with other residents to pray, overheard a resident's conversation about a Burmese woman who had just died. From the information available, Everyone who had ever known Mocking moved from Ladda land. It seems that the ghost of the woman who died horribly began to terrorize the residents. Even the monk who prayed for him was attacked. Parn also witnessed with his own eyes the appearance of the rotten feet of a Burmese woman. That night, Parn confided in her husband about the ghost terror that hid the elite housing estate. T, who has been fighting desperately to buy the house, tries to ignore the strange happenings around her and chooses to stay in Ladda land. That night Nan didn't come home either because he was working on an assignment at the school dormitory with his friends. At the same time, the housing security guard was also harassed while walking around the complex. By pedaling a bicycle, the security guard met a female ghost figure squatting alone in the middle of the road. He shone on the woman's figure with a flashlight and saw her rotten legs, which made the ghost disappear instantly. By midnight, Nan had not yet returned home, making T worry about him. He heard the sound of activity downstairs. T thought it was Nan. T checked in her kitchen but no one was there. T chose to sit on the sofa while waiting for her daughter to come home. Strangely, the motion sensor of the room's air conditioner moved by itself. Apparently, the female ghost figure reappeared. T chased the ghost figure into the kitchen. They fought with sharp weapons until finally T's head was thrown by a bottle of sauce. The ghost manages to escape while T reports the night's intrusion to the police. Exactly 1 o'clock in the morning, Nan had just returned home still wearing his uniform. Nan did not apologize to his parents who were waiting anxiously and went straight into the room. The next day, T buys a gun just in case an intruder robs her house. Meanwhile, Parn, who is at home, hears a big fight between Mr. Somkiat and Nit. Mr. Somkiat rushed out of the house with dirty red clothes. In the afternoon, T came home with some tools to make swings in the yard. Nit brought his son named Golf to play with Nat. At that time Parn again saw the scars on Nit's body more than before. Nit complains that his family's financial condition is deteriorating. Outside the house, T brought in a black cat that had a camera necklace around its neck. He opened the photo file that the camera had captured with Nat and Golf. At that moment Parn entered the room and took 10,000 baht to lend to Nit. In the evening, Nan came home with 3 other friends. As rumors of ghosts in Ladda land became more and more common, Nan's 3 friends stopped at house number 8 and infiltrated it. Nan was very scared at first and chose to wait in front of the house. However, because Malan Beep did not come out, Nan joined in following his other friends. Nan unlocked the door of the house, which was unlocked. The door of the house seemed to be open after the glass was broken by the children. Nan entered a room where his friend's cell phone rang loudly. From behind his body appeared the shadow of a human hand ready to ambush. Turns out, Nan's friends are working on him. Behind them, appeared a ghostly figure that actually floated into the air. Nan was very afraid to see the ghost, but his lips were speechless. The door to the room locked by itself while Nan's friends screamed hysterically who knew what had happened to them. After a while, Nan ventured to open the door to the room. But the monstrous ghost was already standing behind him trying to grab Nan's shoulder. The beautiful girl ran home and immediately locked herself in the room. In the morning Nan tells his father that their house is very haunted and haunted. Parn also gets a call from grandmother who is worried about her grandson's condition. Dottie asks Parn to return to Bangkok so that the children will not be terrorized by evil ghosts again. Meanwhile, T gets bad news because the employee's salary will be delayed for several months. In the evening, T checked all the bills that had to be paid for the next month. T was so frustrated with the monthly bill that she blamed Parn's parents. T's words that Nan was stubborn like her grandmother. This made Parn sad and chose silence to stop the conversation. Elsewhere, Nan is still with his friends in the dormitory to do assignments. Nan was asked by his friends to explain what he saw in the house. Nan, who is afraid, is done by his friends to make him angry. Since Nan didn't come home, T decided to follow her son to the dormitory. T saw Nan was in bed with a male friend. T advised her daughter not to do this for fear that her daughter would be impregnated by an irresponsible man. Nan actually said that he did not like living in a haunted housing complex. T was very upset by her son's stubbornness and dragged him into the haunted house. Nan cried out to his father not to take him inside. Because of her emotions, T proves that ghosts are not real. Nan, who was still struggling, fell down until his hand was scratched by shards of glass. Nan ran out in anger at what his father had done to him. When T was about to leave, the door of the house locked by itself. T heard that someone was sweeping the house. He walked into the house where the red refrigerator used to store the corpse was still lying there. T saw a woman's shadow behind the window. He pulled the curtains aside, which turned out to be. T checked to see where the woman had disappeared. The next day, Nan had packed up his things to live in the school dormitory. Parn says if Nan will come home every week or once every 2 weeks. Arriving at the office, T got a surprise because the dietary supplement drug office had been closed. Many employees gathered to demand their unpaid entitlements. T's boss was also transferred to Bangkok because the company had gone bankrupt. At the same time, Parn received a guest, a man named Manup. The man was Parn's former boss when he was still working in his office. Manup deliberately visits Parn's residence to offer him a job with a higher salary than before. T, who had just arrived home, caught Manup's car leaving his house. T's mind was running wild. He looked at his wife suspiciously and went straight into the room. T saw the blankets and pillows in her room were messy, thinking that his wife had misbehaved with the man. When Parn comes to surprise her, T shoots Parn in the head and falls down lifeless. T was awakened by Parn's voice, who was still beside her, interrupting T's thoughts. That afternoon T read a job vacancy in a magazine and immediately applied for various jobs. Of all the companies, only small supermarkets accept T to work there as an ordinary employee. T got a uniform and got to work mopping the self-service floors. At that time, he heard the conversation of 2 young men who said that the Ladda estate was so haunted that no one dared to live there. T looked for the whereabouts of the 2 young men, who turned out to be stealing drinks. An emotional T immediately beat up the young man and was immediately separated by the shop manager. T was fired at that time, but he refused to be fired because he only helped catch thieves. After work, T returned home with the look of his flashy shirt. He took the children's savings book to pay off quite a lot of monthly bills. At that moment, Nat's voice was heard whining at Golf, begging for the door to be opened. It turned out that Golf was joking with Nat, locking the boy in the cupboard. T again made emotions. He dragged Golf back to his house and complained about the boy's behavior to Pak Somkiat. The man immediately slapped Golf and took him into the house. T begins to realize that Ladda is home to people with criminal records. Starting from domestic violence, torture, to murder. The day has changed again. After work, T saw a cat camera lying in the yard. T checked the photo in the camera and found photos of the apparition inside house number 8. In addition, T also found a photo of her son and Golf entering the haunted house. He immediately followed Nat to house number 8 and heard a noise in the red refrigerator. Under the refrigerator there was fresh blood flowing out. T was increasingly convinced that Nat was in the refrigerator because Golf was tricked by him. He quickly removed the duct tape that locked the refrigerator door. When they were about to open it, T got a call from Parn, who said that Nat had gone home. Suddenly the refrigerator door opened by itself and was blocked by T's feet. The man sprinted towards his house. When he got home, Nat told him that Golf had forced him into the house to catch the black cat. T got angry again and cursed Pak Somkiat for being incompetent in taking care of her child. T even said that Nit borrowed 10,000 baht from him and forced Mr. Somkiat to return the money immediately. Mr. Somkiat, who was angry, threw the money he owed his wife and kicked T out of his yard. T fell into the fence and hurt her hand. While returning home to treat the wound on his hand, Mr. Somkiat's black cat sneaks in and is hunted by a very emotional T. T pinned the black cat's head, Mr. Somkiat, at the door of the house until it died. The next morning when Parn was about to take out the trash, he noticed something odd with Mr. Somkiat's house. The house looked dirty and the lights didn't turn off even though it was already bright. Meanwhile at the supermarket, while T is working, Nan goes in to do some shopping. Nan didn't say anything at all seeing his father working as a waiter in a small shop. T returned to her house and again passed Nan who was carrying goods delivered by her friend. Parn finds out that T is short of money and uses the children's savings. Parn said he would return to work for Manup as secretary to cover economic matters. Hearing this, T was furious and accused his wife of having an affair with Manup. Parn was so disappointed to hear her husband's words that they decided to separate beds. At 2:59 in the morning, T saw Pak Somkiat's mother walking out of their house. The next morning, when T was interviewing for a job at the company, her neighbor called and told her that Pak Somkiat had killed his own family. The front of the house was already filled with residents and police who evacuated the victim. They said that Pak Somkiat shot dead his own family and killed himself. Golf's body was carried on a stretcher where his face was hollow with blood still pouring out. A neighbor said that Mr. Somkiat and his family had died a few days ago. Parn begs her husband to move out of the haunted estate. Parn asks T to come back to Bangkok with herself and the kids. T insisted on staying in the house because the mortgage was not over yet. Parn again persuaded her husband to rent a house instead of staying there. T cried as she said that she didn't want to be humiliated by her mother-in-law anymore. Hearing her husband's grief, Parn said that he would return to work for Manup in order to earn additional income to pay the installments and other bills. T again said that Parn just wanted to get back into a relationship with his wife's former boss. Parn is still patient and explains clearly that their relationship is nothing more than just colleagues. But because T kept accusing him, Parn said he wanted to separate from her husband. That night, Parn chose to sleep with Nat in his room. Nat woke up and blew his own finger asking the ghost of Golf to be quiet and quiet. Meanwhile in his room, T looked uneasy and saw the spirit of Mr. Somkiat standing in front of his house. The murderous ghost continued to stare at T as if it was angry with her. The next morning, T left for work as usual. He saw that everyone in the housing had moved out of the house. Even the security guard who was on duty was not there. The housing is now empty with no other occupants besides his family. At home, Parn is increasingly disturbed by the behavior of his son Nat, who says that Golf invites him to play hide and seek. Nat searches for Golf but can't find him. Parn says his son lied to him. But Nat cried because he had never lied to his mother. An annoyed Parn beats his son's body until T gets emotional seeing him. Because he couldn't take it anymore, that night, Parn called his mother begging to stay in Bangkok. Grandmother welcomed her son's request with great affection. Hearing Parn cry, Dottie says that Parn is still her favorite daughter. In the morning, T continued to make swings in the yard. Parn asks Nan to go home and pack things as they are going back to Bangkok. When he took the handkerchief on the clothesline, the white cloth floated into Pak Somkiat's yard. Nan was forced to climb over the wall and look for the white cloth. As he bent down to pick it up, someone came and looked for Nan's whereabouts. The girl dodged the legs of the ghost who was trying to catch her. However, the ghost of Nit appears on the clothesline to peek at Nan. Nan, who did not know that Pak Samkiat's family had died, immediately apologized for sneaking into someone else's yard. Nan ran for safety. She had to go to the hospital because of the shock of seeing the apparition. Parn blamed T for never listening to complaints from his wife and children. Parn is increasingly determined to return to his parents' house in Bangkok. With great sadness, T picked up Nat and took him home. T put her youngest child to sleep in the room, and the fan accompanied the child to sleep. On that stormy night, T woke up to see Nat coming out of the room. T looks for Nat, who is not in the house. He saw his son's sandals in the yard. T immediately came out of the rain to find where Nat was. The man brought a gun and snuck into Pak Samkiat's house. When he saw the results of Golf's painting, suddenly the spirit of the little boy appeared in front of him. T asks if Nat is in the house. Golf nodded his head. Nat asked where his son was. Golf started tearing the drawing paper up to his face. T ran upstairs to the mannequin room where Nit displayed her stitches. At the same time, Parn returns home after a call from T regarding Nat, who is missing from home. Behind the mannequins, T heard the sound of a sewing machine turning on by itself. Immediately, the mannequin that T was holding turned into a ghostly figure of Nit with a long scratched mouth. T screaming in fear made Parn realize her husband's position in Pak Samkiat's house. T went into Pak Samkiat's room, where the blood of murder still adorned the room. Behind the bed, Nat's body lay there unconscious. When T was about to resuscitate her child, suddenly a man's cry was heard. Apparently, the spirit of Mr. Samkiat appeared and was crying at the end of his bed. The lifeless bodies of Nit, Golf and his grandmother lay lifeless right in front of their eyes. Pak Samkiat cries, carrying a gun, and starts attacking T. The gunshots sounded so loud that it made Parn even more panicked. Mr. Samkiat's ghost figure kept appearing and disappearing as if toying with T to spend his bullets. Little Nat was still hiding in the cupboard waiting for things to get better. Meanwhile, Parn ran upstairs to catch up with her husband there. When Parn opened the bedroom door, suddenly, a bullet shot straight through the cupboard where Nat was hiding. Blood oozed from the bottom of the cupboard where Nat fell unconscious. Parn hugged her youngest child's body while screaming hysterically and crying bitterly. Seeing her beloved child die in her own hands, T seemed to have lost her life. Behind his beloved wife's back, T raised his rifle, and the father of two chose to kill himself for his failure to protect his beloved son. After the incident, Parn took Nan and Nat back to their grandmother's house in Bangkok. Even though Nat was shot in the chest, the little boy was still able to survive. The mortgage house in Ladda land is now empty and left abandoned. Parn tells Nan about when he graduated from high school and got pregnant with T. At that time, Parn had thought about having an abortion. But T blocks Parn's plans and meets his parents to take responsibility. Grandma cursed T out loud, but the man never gave up. T can only say that she will always take care of Parn and the child in her womb. Parn manages to convince Nan that T loves his children and wife very much. The film ends with Nan's tears regretting his cold attitude towards his father. The scene in the past when Parn and T got married also completed the sad story of the family. Parn's parents never accepted T as their son-in-law despite being with Parn for a dozen years. Even when they lived at Parn's parents' house, T was never considered there. The complete photo of the T family playing on the swing of the parents' house is the closing of this film. And the film ends. Ladda Land was a huge hit in Thailand, where it reached #1 in its first week. The director deliberately packaged a horror story wrapped in a family drama that was plagued by endless problems. This film is reportedly inspired by a true story about a residential area in Thailand which is slowly being abandoned by its inhabitants due to a series of mysterious events that occur in the area. From this story, Valuable lessons can be learned so that the family can respect each other and listen to each other's complaints. Do not let ambition and ego sacrifice the happiness of other family members. Thank you and goodbye.